Uh, General, how are you?
I'm doing well, and how are you doing with all this
Good.
chaos?
Just it is like just now, as we speaking, uh, literally as soon as I said go live to the producers, um, the Israeli security establishment estimates that Iran is preparing to return to war with Israel and carry out attacks against it. There were attacks um, on the Israeli-Jordan border on a target there, I think an airport, that the Israeli media is considering a warning to Israel. But Israel intercepted some of these missiles as well, some of the debris. Um, and all this happened after yesterday. Yesterday was a really big day. The morning started with a warning by Iran that if their infrastructure is struck again, they will strike the airports and ports in the UAE. Announcement by the Americans that 2 soldiers have died, one missing, so potentially 3 soldiers killed. And then the US, Trump said he'll open up the gates of hell, but he also said, kind of dismiss, according to a CBS report, but publicly he said, it happens. It's just one of those things. He dismissed it, downplayed it, even though a few weeks ago he said this is a big red line for him that could drag the US back into war. And the US retaliated yesterday in one of the weakest attacks we've seen since the ceasefire, since the tit for tat. In the last, it's not since ceasefire, in the last few weeks. The attacks by the Americans have been escalating, and yesterday was significantly less, which was surprising considering there were 2 things that happened yesterday that are very significant: the Iranian warning and the American casualties. The American casualties usually lead to escalation. The Iranian warning, if it worked, would lead to de-escalation. So one could assume that warning dictated what Trump did next.
Wait, okay, so I believe more is going to come from the U.S., more significantly more in the next 24 to 48 hours, because you can imagine the president is quite frankly trying to figure out how to deal with this latest blowback, and without it going south, or without it degenerating into all-out war again. I don't really believe he's going to find a way out of this. I think it's going to be something where it's going to get a lot worse in the next 3 or 4 days than not.
There is a lot of people that are worried this is so first there's indications that you're right. Wallah just put out a story today that is in line with other stories yesterday. The US military is significantly reinforcing its force in the Middle East amid escalating conflict, according to a security official. According to an Israeli Air Force official, the US planned to station approximately 100 aerial refueling tankers across Israel. Dozens of tankers arrived over the weekend, with more expected. The US is also redeploying F-35 jets from Britain and F-15 jets from Germany, including aircraft specialized in suppressing enemy air defenses and radars, aimed at blinding the Revolutionary Guards, blinding Iran. And we've seen the attacks on the southern coast in the last few days. It's pretty clear they're degrading Iran's ability to control the Strait of Hormuz, or even jeopardize or push back against any ground operation by the US. And then even the infrastructure that was struck is bridges and tunnels and Bandar Abbas in that region that are supply lines used by Iran to supply the southern coast. So a lot of people are seeing that as a shaping operation. So maybe good to get your thoughts on the military buildup and the F-35s, the F-15s, the refueling aircraft, and the targeting in the last couple of weeks.
So looking forward, if all the reports that you are receiving are true, which my gut check is they probably are fairly accurate, then that means that indeed the U.S. is going to restart a significant offensive operation in the next few days. It could be tonight, it could be tomorrow night, but I think the next few days. These kinds of things do not take place instantly. It's not like you just push a button and stuff happens. So it takes several days to be able to build up additional aircraft, additional refueling capability, and so on. 100 refueling aircraft. The United States has somewhere on the order of 600 of various types. It's the largest in the world. However, remember that means even if there's 600, generally operating capability plus maintenance, scheduled maintenance, and so on, you might be able to draw from 400, perhaps a little more, maybe. So committing a quarter to a third of your entire refueling capability to one theater that's a big deal. That's a real big deal, and it's an indicator of things to come.
Yeah, it's, there's some things that look like a bluff, like when Trump is talking about wiping out a civilization. And there's other things that are just too vast that it's highly unlikely to be a bluff, like the military buildup before this war on February 28th. And you're saying that this one, the buildup that we're seeing now, with the lack of rhetoric, Trump is not, threatening to wipe out a civilization anymore. He's been pretty quiet, actually. But that buildup makes it highly unlikely that there won't be escalation.
The buildup, okay, the Iranians know what we're doing. This is not any secret. The issue is going to be, to what extent do they push Israel or push the U.S. into a wider conflict with the idea that to further deplete the U.S. arsenal, and of course to further alienate our remaining friendships we have in the Middle East. Also, the fact that they're talking about attacking Saudi Arabia, that, if true, could be another game changer. Because right now, as you know, the Saudis have really stayed out of this. But yet they have the largest military in the region beyond the United States capability to forward project.
How likely do you think that there will be some sort of ground operation, considering the targeting by the Americans?
I think in the best, or well, depends on what you call best or worst. But in the U.S. just does not have the ability to project many, many tens of thousands of soldiers and Marines forward rapidly. For Desert Storm and for the other wars in the Middle East, it has taken us up to a year to be able to do this. So if it was any kind of a ground operation, it would be
total, I think. And then Bloomberg has reported that an Iranian attack caused a fire at a power plant and a water desalination plant in Kuwait. We'll show that to the audience. Go ahead, General.
Okay, I'm back. I'm sorry. For some reason, I got dropped for a minute or two. So please restate the question.
Of course. So you're talking about how in previous ground operations by the Americans, it took about a year to prepare. This is in Kuwait, by the way, one of the power plants that was struck by the Iranians. So the infrastructure is no longer completely out of bounds as it was before. But you were explaining how Operation Desert Storm and others, the military buildup took about a year.
Yes, that's correct.
And this one as well took months. For an air operation, it took months to build up, 2-3 months before the February operation. So you were sharing that information in the context of the likelihood of a ground operation by Iran.
Yes, and saying that, quite frankly, in the best or worst case, depending on your perspective, a extremely limited capability to occupy any territory, small territory, short term, exists, but it will come at a cost. And I don't mean just a cost of lives on both sides. I also mean in terms of potential longer term implications. If indeed the intent would be to occupy Carrick Island or anything like that, the challenge is going to be that if infrastructure is destroyed, it degrades the Iranian ability to restore their own supplies and their own sale of oil, and that's going to diminish. It's going to keep oil prices higher, and they will be a huge target that could be accessible from anywhere in Iran, either by drone or by missile. Again, this idea, I remember on your podcast before, you mentioned the previous speaker had said, a guy on a donkey with binoculars and a cell phone can see what's going on. And that's true. And the U.S. does not have the ability to occupy the land around the strait, and it does no good. That is old school thinking that you could possibly in any way safeguard something just by occupying that area. It won't work. Drones and missiles come from hundreds of miles away.
What about logistically? How difficult would it be if that is a part of their strategy, by the American strategy? How difficult would it be for the Americans to supply troops that are on these islands? Let's not go all the way to Karg in the west, but the islands. If you can show them on the map, KK, the islands in the Strait of Hormuz, the Tunub Island, the Kashem Kish, all these different islands. How difficult do you think it would be to supply them with water, with ammunition?
It'd be very difficult. When I say anything is possible short term, anything is possible. You can get water in there, you can get ammunition in there. You can do these things where whether you land them by ship or by aircraft or by even dropping supplies. The question is going to be, what do you do long term? That's really, and it gets back to the original point. What the hell is what is Trump's intent? Trump's intent is get the hell out of this mess that he created. It amuses me, but sarcastically amuses me, that now we're talking about keeping the strait open, when reality was 4 months ago, the strait was open. But now the Iranians realize the power of their geography and a few $100,000 of drones, how they can control the world economy, literally. So anyway, go ahead, please.
So I had two different guests tell me two different things on the logistical side. One of them is explaining how it's logistically impossible not impossible, but it's a suicide mission to be supplying the troops on these islands between the straits there that are seen on that map. And another guest makes the point that the U.S. has the most capable military in the world by far, and they've proven it time and time again. Does the U.S. have the logistical capabilities to be able to supply troops on those little islands in the middle without them being sitting ducks for the Iranians? Can ships get through? Can helicopters will be very difficult? Could they airdrop it from aircraft?
Okay. It would not be a suicide mission. That's number one. The U.S. would put in so much effort to be able to safeguard it, that for some period of time, and we're talking perhaps days or weeks, it could be occupied. The reality is they would be sitting ducks. The reality is the United States, like almost every country, any 100% assurance of drones not getting through. We do not have that capability. So in answering your question, it's possible to resupply those troops if they were to get there. It would be a course of action I would never recommend, ever, because what is the objective? What is it we're trying to achieve by occupying those lands? To feed the president's ego that we're sitting with American soldiers on some piece of Iranian territory? Absolute insanity. We should not be doing it. Hopefully we're not going to do it. And if we do, it will come at great expense to the United States and potentially great loss of life over a long time. Short term, it would not be a suicide mission. It would be tough, but it would not be, it could be done. It could be done, but not long term. Not long term.
Another military question here. There's a report: Iran successfully chased away the U.S. Air Force MQ-4C Triton surveillance drone from the Middle East. With daily missile attacks on Jordanian bases, the $250 million drone was sent running to the Naval Air Station in Sicily, too far for the drone to be able to make surveillance flights on Iran. The last time the drone was seen on aircraft tracking sites like Flight Radar was on July 14th. And we've seen satellite images, not sure, KK, if you can find them, of the US bases being struck, and the precision. We've seen reports, but we've seen it as well in these satellite images. The precision of the Iranian strikes have been so exact. There's been reports of, from US media, of multiple aircraft destroyed. Let me see if I can find it.
I've heard those reports.
Yeah, exactly. There's one here.
Is that Kuwait, by the way?
This one is, where is this one, KK? I think this one looks like it's one of the, it's in Kuwait or Jordan. I've asked my producer now.
That looks like it's Kuwait.
It's Qatar. This one's in Qatar.
Oh, Qatar. Okay.
Because Qatar was struck only once in the recent back and forth, once or twice. But there's a report about the Black Hawk helicopters, a few of them that were destroyed, according to reports. There were reports that, let me see. Yeah, there it is. According, I think, New York Times and Wall Street Journal, the attack on the King Faisal Air Base injured as many as 5 U.S. service members. A second strike hit a base in eastern Jordan where U.S. Black Hawk helicopters were operating, damaging a significant number of them. Another report, a senior U.S. official to the Wall Street Journal, revealed that Iranian strikes on Jordan destroyed an F-15 Strike Eagle and damaged several other fighter jets and unmanned aircraft or drones. New York Times reported that a significant number of U.S. H-60 Black Hawk helicopters deployed at a base in eastern Jordan were damaged. The capabilities of the Iranians from a targeting perspective, and that report of the drone not being able to operate in the region because too expensive, they've had to take it outside the region into a base in Europe. Would love to get your thoughts on that.
Okay, so first of all, the idea of running off a drone is probably mostly propaganda. I'll say mostly propaganda. It is true that you want to safeguard your most valuable assets that by either cost or how many of them you have. So that part of it could be very true. That part of it could be very true. The part about gets back to the whole point that the president and the Secretary of Defense grossly underestimate the potential of the Iranians on a continual basis, and they fill the airways with propaganda and rhetoric. They're lying to the world, they're lying to the United States, to the citizens about what are the capabilities of Iran. Your photos that you have here that are publicly available, absolutely the case. They can target specific locations. Even if the U.S. destroys 9 out of 10 or 19 out of 20, one or more are going to get through. And thank goodness those are aircraft and not large numbers of soldiers or sailors or airmen or Marines. So the Iranians, I know this doesn't sound right to some of your listeners, particularly those that are hawks in the United States. The reality is the Iranians are showing tremendous constraint not to attack ships, American ships, or land-based facilities housing Americans that would cause tremendous loss of life. It is my opinion, not in my opinion, my professional opinion, they absolutely have the capability. They are not doing it by design. Not because they can't, but because they choose not to. Most Americans don't understand that. The Iranians are a proud people. They're a very powerful military, despite what the president says. And again, we have to figure out a way to just de-escalate this thing and get that straight open. Quite frankly, I hate to even say this. I think the president would be happy that if they returned to the day before the war, he probably would be greatly satisfied compared to right now. He's in a total mess.
Interesting. So I want to read this report as well and then ask you a question on what you said regarding the targeting of U.S. warships. Iran is adapting, and there's been many people talking about this in the last few days. There's a report, I think, by the Wall Street Journal. Iran is adapting to U.S. defenses by firing high-speed maneuverable missiles at U.S. bases in the region, which highlight the threat that the advancement of Iran's ballistic missile program poses to the U.S. national security interests. So their missiles, the maneuverability of their missiles has apparently improved, unless they had them there before and they used weaker missiles, less capable missiles at the beginning of the war as part of a war of attrition to degrade America, to deplete America's munitions, and then use the more capable, maneuverable ones.
Very possible.
Iran's ballistic missile program poses, Iranian leaders have expressed interests since at least the Iranian strikes on Israel in April and October 2024 in employing maneuverable re-entry vehicles in order to improve the relatively low accuracy of Iranian missiles. And then there's also talks about the reports of the Chinese satellites being used by the Iranians to allow them that accuracy. So more advanced maneuverable missiles and the satellite coordinates have made the attacks. Like, these are not haphazard attacks. When we show those satellite images, and there's more in the last few days, it's not like craters in different places. No. One crater on a target. We've seen it time and time again.
Yes, that's exactly correct. Essentially what's happening here is the Iranians are probably learning from the techniques of the Ukrainians, because what's happening to Russia, where the Ukrainians are striking targets deeper inside of Russia and getting some number, I mean, granted, a lot of them are being intercepted, but they're getting hitting pinpoint targets hundreds of miles away. Guess what? The Iranians are learning as well. In the United States, like Russia, is slow to learn, and we are paying for it right now, sadly, paying for it with some lives of American soldiers and wounded, but we're also paying literally tens of millions of dollars of lost equipment because the Iranians are so very effective at this.
All right, so there's a report here of the U.S. attack the Darkovay nuclear power plant site in Kazakhstan and Iran. And we've seen the same thing happen. We saw a Kuwaiti power plant burning just a few minutes ago when your connection cut out. So we've talked about the military reinforcement. Okay, this is coming from Iran. I spoke to Professor Morandi, who's close to the Iranian government, and he mentioned it as not like a big announcement, like it's kind of in passing as part of our discussion. This is the another country in the Gulf that is just shows the damage. Oh wow, okay. Wow, holy shit! 3 targets struck.
Where are those images from? I mean, what?
Those are. Let me ask it. This is in the UAE.
Okay. And are those U.S. bases in the UAE?
Yeah, they are.
Okay. Again,
satellite imagery of July 16 shows the destruction of 3 storage facilities in Zayed military camp in Abu Dhabi.
Okay. Very believable.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Professor Morandi mentioned in passing how the Iranians, the military men he speaks to, the military officials, they look at these strikes by the US, they're like, Mario, it's very clear this is a shaping operation for a ground operation. Now, whether Trump was stupid enough, I'm saying it in Morandi's words, whether he's stupid enough to actually conduct such an operation, I think it's stupid as well, to be clear. I don't know. He doesn't know. But it's that's clearly what it's what the objective is. And you have here an Iranian principalist member of parliament, Abbas Papizadeh, claimed the U.S. plans to seize control of the Strait of Hormuz before launching a ground offensive against Iran, warning that recent U.S. strikes on southern infrastructure are intended to prepare the battlefield for a wider military campaign. He alleges Washington would first secure oil shipments to the U.S. and its allies before opening a land assault from the south, west, and east. He urged the rapid deployment of volunteer besieged forces across Iran's southern provinces and called for increased military preparedness, arguing that the latest U.S. attacks on transport infrastructure indicate a shift towards potential ground operation. Holy crap. And the Iranians are also striking the Kurds heavily on a daily basis, which shows that they're worried or concerned, or they have some reason to believe the Kurds could also be involved in some way. But that's a really pretty scary warning. He expects an invasion from 3 fronts.
Yeah. So, again, I think it's over-dramatized propaganda as well. I am not ruling out the fact that the president could order some kind of a ground operation. I think it would be inadvisable or stupid even to do so. Again, what's the objective? I keep on asking that question. What the hell are we doing here? What do we want out of this? The president just wants to return to day -1 from many months ago. That's what he wants. And it's sad because people are suffering all over the world because of this. The president also, we need to broaden what his objectives are. He's trying to, his speech recently where he's trying to sow doubt about the U.S. elections and to be able to say, I mean, he is prepping the United States for occupation of polling sites by military. So you can, it's my opinion, my professional opinion, he is just, I mean, remember, we have, let's see, this is July. So we've got August, September, and October, 3 months, 100 days-ish until such time that the United States is going to, quite frankly, topple this government. And when I mean topple it, it means that it is likely that the House will change, the Senate could change, and that means that it will completely bring Trump to his knees. He cannot afford that to happen. And it will stop the war. It will stop this insanity. So why do I even mention this? You have to think more strategically. What is the president of the United States trying to do? He's trying to stay in power. He's trying to keep his family in power. He's trying to keep his cronies in power. And that means he is already, again, doing things in the United States to be able to either seize ballot boxes. He's trying to eliminate any mail balloting. He is trying to get inside the states to seek personal information on people who are voting against him. He is actually declaring war on people who do not agree with him in the United States. And he knows that if he doesn't finish this in 90 days, then he is going to, by January 20th, when the new government takes over in Congress, he will be totally ineffective. So your viewers have got to look at the bigger picture. This is all about the president maintaining power. This is not about the Middle East. It's not about a nuclear weapon. It's not about Israel. It's about him staying in power.